Magandang araw sa inyong lahat. Today, we're diving into one of the most significant laws in the fight against illegal drugs in the Philippines, Republic Act No. 9165, also known as the Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002. Specifically, we will focus on how this law applies in the context of a buy-bust operation, one of the most commonly used strategies in drug law enforcement. RA 9165 was enacted to strengthen the government's campaign against illegal drugs. It outlines the policies, offenses, penalties, and roles of agencies involved in drug prevention and enforcement. The law covers everything from possession and trafficking to treatment and rehabilitation. Under this law, acts such as sale, trading, administration, dispensation, delivery, distribution, and transportation of dangerous drugs are heavily penalized, especially when large quantities are involved. So what are the elements of illegal sale of dangerous drugs? The Supreme Court has held that the elements of illegal sale of dangerous drugs under Section 5, Article 2 of RA 9165 are: first, the identity of the buyer, the seller, the object, and the consideration; and second, the delivery of the thing sold and the payment. Further, in People v. Lim, GR number 187503, September 11, 2009, the Supreme Court describes buy-bust operation as a form of entrapment. It is a legitimate law enforcement technique where a police officer or agent poses as a buyer of illegal drugs to catch a seller in the act. This is considered a valid in flagrante delicto arrest under Section 5, Rule 113 on arrest of the Rules of Court, meaning the suspect is caught in the very act of committing the crime and can be arrested even without a warrant. Under Section 5 of RA 9165, the sale, trading, administration, dispensation, delivery, and distribution of dangerous drugs is punishable by life imprisonment to death and a fine of 500,000 to 10 million peso, especially when the quantity exceeds certain thresholds. The Supreme Court has consistently upheld the legality of buy-bust operations, provided that the rights of the accused are respected and procedures are properly followed. Notable cases such as People v. Doria, People v. Calleja emphasize the importance of objective test, which looks at the totality of circumstances, ensuring that the operation was not merely a setup or a violation of due process. So what is the chain of custody rule under RA 9165? One of the most crucial aspects of any drugs case is Section 21 of RA 9165, which mandates the chain of custody procedure. Section 13, Paragraph A of the PNP Manual on Anti-Illegal Drugs Operation and Investigation states that in handling, custody, and disposition of the evidence, the provision of Section 21 of RA 9165 and its IRR shall be strictly observed. In Chanyamor v. People, GR number 228132, March 11, 2020, the Supreme Court pronounced that the decisive requirements that bear upon buy-bust operation are the immediacy of the physical inventory and photographing of the seized items, and the protective, insulating presence of the required witnesses. Hence, right after the seizure of the drugs, law enforcers must immediately inventory and photograph the evidence in the presence of the accused, along with the representatives from the media or DOJ and an elected public official. Where should inventory and photographs should be done? In People v. Almeida, GR number 227706, June 14, 2023, inventory and photographs of drug evidence generally must be done at the place of seizure. The exception to this rule is where the physical inventory and taking of photographs of the seized item may be conducted at the nearest police station or at the nearest office of the apprehending officer or team, provided that the police officer have justification that, first, it is not practicable to conduct the same at the place of seizure, or second, the items seized are threatened by immediate or extreme danger at the place of seizure. Under the PNP Manual on Anti-Illegal Drugs Operation and Investigation, the seizing officer must mark the evidence with his initials, indicating therein the date, time, and place where the evidence was found and seized. The officer shall secure and preserve the evidence in a suitable evidence bag or in an appropriate container for further laboratory examinations. In the same case of Tanyamor versus People, the presence of the insulating witnesses must be secured not only during the inventory, but more importantly, at the time of the warrantless arrest. It is at this point in which the presence of the three witnesses is most needed, as it is their presence at the time of seizure and confiscation that would belie any doubt as to the source, identity, and integrity of the seized drug. If the buy-bust operation is legitimately conducted, the presence of the insulating witnesses would also controvert the usual defense of frame-up, as the witnesses would be able to testify that the buy-bust operation and inventory of the seized drugs were done in their presence in accordance with Section 21 of RA 9165. So what are the links in the chain of custody? In People versus Arpo Seple, GR number 205787, November 22, 2017, the following are the links of the chain of custody. First, the seizure, inventory, and photograph of the illegal drug recovered from the accused by the apprehending officer. Second, the turnover of the illegal drug seized by the apprehending officer to the investigating officer. Third, the turnover by the investigating officer of the illegal drug to the forensic chemist for laboratory examination. Fourth, the turnover and submission of the marked illegal drug seized from the forensic chemist to the court. Failure to follow this can lead to acquittals due to doubts on evidence integrity, as seen in various acquittals by the Supreme Court. So, what are the common issues in buy-bust cases? Despite their effectiveness, buy-bust operations are also prone to abuse and controversy. Common legal issues include frame-up allegations, failure to comply with chain of custody rules, lack of proper witnesses during seizure and inventory, or even questionable credibility of the pursuer buyer. These flaws often result in the dismissal of cases due to reasonable doubt. For buy-bust operations to hold up in court, officers must coordinate with the PIDEA, use body-worn cameras when available or alternative recording device, strictly follow the chain of custody under Section 21 of RA 9165, secure proper documentation, and always respect the constitutional rights of the suspects. In conclusion, while buy-bust operations are legal and effective tools under RA 9165, success in court relies heavily on proper execution and strict adherence to procedures. RA 9165 aims not just to punish, but to ensure justice is served without compromising human rights. I am Police Captain Attorney Harry Dave Ocampo Pagawa of the PNP Legal Service na nagsasabing, Sa bagong Pilipinas, ang gusto ng pulis, ligtas ka.